was lucky enough to be accepted into the closed network beta test for Sonic Racing CrossWorlds, and figured it is my civic duty to make a quick video on it. So, as a certified believer that All Stars Transformed was one of, if not the best racing game, does Sonic Racing CrossWorlds take inspiration from it, or even hold a candle to what came in 2012? And it's up in the air. Obviously, everything here is from the closed network test, which didn't include a chunk of the roster, stages, vehicles, and locked off extreme gear. Either because it's not entirely ready, or because they know we want to fucking try it out already. But so far, I don't hate it like I hated Team Sonic Racing. Starting off with the title's CrossWorlds, the CrossWorlds gimmick of swapping to a different track altogether is enjoyable. So far. As a main gimmick, it's clever, but ultimately it's another one of those very obvious Sega gimmicks where it feels like they had to be different for the sake of being different, for really no reason other than to seem like they're not just copying from the competitors. And by competitors, I mean, let's be real here, Mario Kart 8, and whatever the next one is called for Switch 2, like Mario Kart 9 Super Duper. And I'm not saying it's bad, but it also could have just not been there. Right now, there's 5 types of CrossWorlds to pick from during a race. Dino Jungle and Kraken Bay from Sonic and the Secret Rings, Sky Road from Team Sonic Racing, though technically from Unleashed, Roulette Road from Heroes, like always, and Magma Planet based around Veltior from Galaxy Force. If you don't know what that is, I don't either. It's a Japanese Sega arcade game from the 80s. The Secret Ring stages were an amazing surprise, revealed in the first full trailer, and they're translated decently well into racing tracks, but ultimately leave me wanting more. I'd personally rather have full 3-lap races with major map changes like in Transform than 50 seconds on a randomly selected track. And while letting the player in first select the CrossWorld is nice, I feel like there should be an option to make them entirely randomized instead of player choice. Once this game is out for real, it'll quickly become a thing of certain tracks will always be selected when given the option. I couldn't even get footage of Ocean View, and that's not even a CrossWorld track. For online GPs, I hope they'll let us make lobbies where we can select certain rule sets or cut out the middleman and select specific CrossWorlds. The races themselves are very smooth. The game controls nicely, and while it took me a few races to get used to the control scheme, the controls are decent enough to not warrant too much thinking. Although my first race, I did get confused trying to do air tricks as I was very used to that being tied to your right control stick. The return of transforming vehicles is something I'm very happy with, as well as certain tracks having different routes using the different vehicles, where you can opt to either go flying or stay on the ground, for example. However, the new boat jump gimmick is a little weird. Instead of just letting you drift on water, you now get to jump and do air tricks while on a boat. I feel the turning is a bit scuffed and left me ramming into the walls more often than not. However, the boat sections are minimal compared to the plane and ground sections, which is where my biggest gripe lies. The removal of risk boosts make flying very unsatisfying. Risk boosting was done in Transformed by using the barrel roll feature and dodging obstacles just in time, giving you a speed boost and essentially replacing air tricks while in the air. This also let you dodge incoming attacks. The flight paths are also mostly very straight and narrow, not letting you do any worthwhile drifting for a boost, and you're mostly left going for boost rings in the air. As mentioned above, they've removed the ability to escape enemy attacks, which is what made Transformed so much more fun compared to Mario Kart for me. There was more of a tactical vibe to it, using drifts to quickly escape homing attacks and keep your pace, while on the flip side, waiting for the right moment when the player couldn't boost escape their way out of your items was something that made those races very fun. However, much like Mario Kart, it is so much more of a shit show now. If you manage to get ahead of the pack enough, no items except for those designed to target first place will reach you. However, if you're even close enough to anybody else, you can bet your ass you'll be brought into a cartoon dust cloud, meaning you can go from 3rd place to 11th instantly by sheer insanity out of your control. This is a major reason why I hate Mario Kart and makes using items feel awful, because when you're dicked out of items, you're basically just stuck trying your best to catch up, and when you're far enough, most items like the new tornado item have 0 use. And to go on a bit of a tangent, this might be the toxic gamer in me talking, but all of what I said in the removal of failing air tricks makes it feel like they've overcompensated and made the game too casual friendly, with casual in big ol' parentheses. removing tech and options that add some depth to the game, which rewarded some sort of skill that wasn't tied to items. In transformed high-end games, or at least games where you're playing against people who have played the game for a while, would depend on both item usage and using the game's mechanics to your benefit. Now, it feels like the focus is just on item usage, which is RNG tied, and I don't like that in the slightest. For another game, they've opted to remove All-Star actions, which in OG All-Stars and Transformed were actions that were given to players struggling and let you speed up while hurting other players, giving you a chance to come back. We now have 2 fake bullet bills, a drill wisp that speeds you up for a few seconds and hurts enemies that hit you while going in a straight line, and the truck item, which for a brief amount of time lets you run over other players and speeds you up, still allowing you to do air tricks and drifting to add extra speed. Both of these are pretty awful. They don't last long enough for any meaningful change if you're far enough back, and at most will put you from 12th to 7th. The truck as our big special item also absolutely falls flat. In OG All-Stars, the All-Star item would be character specific. Sonic and Shadow would transform into their super forms, Knuckles would glide with the Master Emerald, Big would flop around while holding on to Froggy. This was already removed in Transformed, and instead would transform your car into its flight form, but acting as the same thing, giving you some character-specific attacks, like Sonic will be spin dashing out of his plane. The truck sucks, and the drill wisp is just as bad. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Bring back the All-Star items, you cowards. Like, there's no reason not to do that. Like I said earlier, most of the roster and vehicles have been locked off, and what we have now is fine. I did feel differences in handling and speed based on different vehicle types, those being speed, handling, acceleration, and power. While I didn't feel as much difference based around the characters, and honestly, I think that's fine. You're gonna want to play your favorite character anyway. That's what I do. That's what you're gonna do. Nobody's gonna fucking opt for Zavlok because his 1% fucking increase to speed isn't gonna do anything. But the new customization gimmick left a lot to be desired. There's no mismatching between vehicle types, and you're only swapping different parts from the same types. The ones that are there right now have minimal stat differences and are basically purely cosmetic. I can only hope the full release has some wacky combinations and more stat differences. It's another one of those things in this game where I feel like they took too much inspiration from Mario Kart 8, because it's basically the same deal as that game. As an aside, I am forced to wait to see how Extreme Gears play, but rest assured, I will make Sage do gnarly tricks on an Extreme Gear. It's going to happen. And that was the stuff I'm most positive about, which means now I'm gonna go complain about things I don't like. I am going to keep it 100% with you, Sega. What the fuck is this? It is 2025, you're using the goddamn Unreal Engine, and yet you're using fucking 2D choppy GIFs as stand-ins for the audience members. Like, not even 3D models doing basic animations. You can make the argument that, well, you're not going to see them, but you are. They're on the current title screen, and the lobby, which is also just ripped off directly from Mario Kart 8, right down to the space station aesthetic. You even had 3D model Chao as audience members in Transformed, back in 2012. Lads, what the fuck? They've decided to pull out the Islander models from Forces out of their extra hard drives and made them the general racing crew, which is fine, but they've also sized them up massively. Like, look at this fucker is 6'3". The average Sonic fan isn't 6'3". Sonic is already a canonical manlet, you didn't have to make him feel worse. And I get it, it's probably done so they're actually seeable behind barriers, but like, it's kinda weird. And the soundtrack, I don't like it. The main theme is alright, but all of the new tracks are really upbeat and using different instruments. Third Laps use these mini vocal tracks, and sometimes you can make out what they're saying. But other times you just hear overlapping sound samples. It's not good. And while the crowd chanting is a cute gimmick to try and use, it's not very good here. Also, you guys butchered Ocean Fuse remix. How do you ruin You Can Do Anything? Now, I will be fair and say you can basically only hear the title screen theme clearly, as everything else is covered up by car noises, general ambiance, and Sonic character noises. But what we can hear right now is just not it. The tracks feel muted, and this, funnily enough, is the same issue I had with Green Light Ride back in Team Sonic Racing. Something feels off here. I don't know what to call this type of music, but I've been calling it faux orchestral, where instead of the typical Sonic instruments focusing on guitars and rougher sounding songs, or in Otani's case, either mid-sounding DJ tracks or god-awful sounding synth combined with the same drum and bass track for an entire soundtrack, Sonic Forces, but even Metal Harbor's mix feel much more upbeat and peppy. I don't know, maybe I'm speaking complete bullshit, but the soundtrack just isn't it for me. When I play a racing game, not just that, but a Sonic racing game, I expect the soundtrack to be electrifying and get me pumped up for racing, not trying to comprehend what somebody's trying to say over a piano or muted guitars in the background. Overall, the few hours I played of the CNC were infinitely more fun than any amount of time I spent on Team Sonic Racing, and I can see myself actively playing this with friends like I did All Stars Transformed. Sadly, however, my complaints are pretty inherent to the game and I doubt they'll be adjusted. At most, I can at least hope that whatever battle pass they have planned introduces interesting characters, both from Sega and Sonic specifically. I'd love to see the IDW gang, or at least Surge. I need that electric gremlin voiced in a real game already. I'd also love to see Ichiban and Kiryu in the games. There's a lot they can do here. As for stuff like the music, I highly doubt they'll change that, so you know what? In true Sonic fan fashion, I'll just fix it with mods and pretend it's not the same. Overall, the game's fine. Wait for the full release. My issues are probably pretty inherent, and nothing's gonna change, so... Uh-oh!